kind of my message to the team over the past week, and I'll kind of share with you, is delayed gratification. And I said it's a difficult thing to really understand and to talk about, especially when you don't get the outcome you want. Outside of our building, you're evaluated off one thing, and that's wins and losses. But inside the building, we must continue to be mature enough to understand that the momentarily success or failure is not what the goal is. Our goal and our focus has to be to reach our full potential. And that takes understanding delayed gratification. The first thing you want to do after you lose is go play again. You want to show everybody that we're good, we got a good team, but we didn't get that opportunity this week, obviously, with a bye. But that shouldn't be where our focus is. Our focus must continue to be on improving, elevating, and doing the things it takes to get our program closer to its full potential. As we evaluated the previous game, we understand there are things we did well in all three phases and things that we must improve. We attacked those things in practice this past week. Thought we had a really good week of practice. And we worked on the things we didn't do so well and worked on enhancing the things we did do well. And so, as we get into game week, we're excited to play at home in front of our home fans, excited and expecting a great atmosphere, for another top 25 matchup in Notre Dame Stadium. A&M is 2-0, playing really well in all three phases. Mike Elko coach teams are tough, physical, and they won't beat themselves. On offense, they're a veteran group led by their O-line. Really good quarterback that can hurt you with both his legs and his arms and his arm. Deep running back room and fast and talented skill on their offense. And defensively, it starts with their D-line. And, as you really evaluate their defense, they got guys on all three levels that are talented and productive. And so this will be another great challenge Saturday night for our program. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Third row on your left, Pete Byrne.
Hey, Marcus. Could you explain the response you got from your team last week and whether or not you were pleased with it or not?
Response?
The response you got from your players.
Yeah, I think, very similar to their head coach. They're disappointed, frustrated. When you invest a lot into, achieving a certain outcome, and the work they put in, and you don't get the outcome that you desire, it hurts. And there's sleepless nights, there's loss of appetite. But what we have to do is we had to turn that frustration into work, and we did. I was really pleased with the work that was put in by our players, our coaching staff this past week in terms of how to elevate, right? Like, how do we find a way to get better? We can't let the outcome, good or bad, distract our eyes from the reality of where we're at as a program, right? And as I told them, you look at last year and this year, we're 1-0 and 0-1, but take away the outcome, like where are we as a program in terms of trying to reach our full potential? And so they turn that frustration into work, and we have to continue to be intentional this week.
You said that you did attack some of the areas where you thought you guys underperformed a week ago. What were some of those areas?
There was a lot, takeaways, ball security, tackling, third down on both sides, short yardage, 2-minute. Those are things that we didn't really execute well in last week's game, really starting fast out of each half, right? The first half, starting fast, we didn't start fast. And in the second half, coming out of the locker room, we didn't start fast. And so, starting fast is, I think, a general term, but I mean, how do you change that? Is the focus and intention is where it needs to be on that play at that given moment, and the execution will follow.
On your right, Tim Priester.
Coach, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit of what you said after the game, but you said something along the lines of you played hard but not hard long enough. How do you like, how do you assess that? When you analyze that and came out of the game, why did that occur?
You know, I always say the team that plays harder longer usually is the one that's successful. You know, you really look at the last drive of the game, and defensively and offensively, you know, we couldn't get the stop defensively that we needed. We you know, let them into field goal range. There was a couple of times where, you know, they were displacing some of our guys. We're missing tackles. It's not a lack of effort, right? It was just a lack of execution, but also credit to them in terms of those guys played extremely hard, and they finished the game better than we did. And, you know, even when we get the ball on offense, we hit, you know, the sack or intentional grounding, and the last play is a sack. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, those crucial moments, you got to play harder but execute at the same time.
You mentioned tackling defensively, but what were the priorities going into the off week?
You know, I mean, most of our missed tackles probably weren't in space. They were more in the box, and the ability to make sure we're driving our feet, we're wrapping up. You don't want to make excuses saying it's first game, missed tackles, but we got to attack them in practice. And so we can't go live tackling, you know, just for the safety of our team. But we have to be intentional about finding ways to tackle different equipment, maybe even people to the ground defensively. And that was something that we really we were intentional about last week. You know, and then when you thud, you got to thud, right? And thud means you stop the ball carrier's feet. That doesn't mean you take them to the ground, but you got to stop their momentum before you let them go. And that's something we had to make sure we do in practice.
Front row on the left, Jack Sobel.
Hey, Coach Freeman. I think of the non-Raritan tight ends, only Ty Washington got like one snap against Miami, at least for PFF. Where are, you know, Ty and Jack Larson and James Flanagan at in terms of being able to help you guys on the field?
Yeah, they're improving. You know, we just last game we, you know, didn't feel like that was what we wanted to do to attack their defense. But we got a lot of confidence in the tight ends room, and those guys are getting better. And if it calls for playing more this week, they will.
As far as the week 2 bye week, what did you feel like were the benefits of that, having that early in the season after a Sunday game?
Yeah, I think you guys have heard me speak enough. I look at every situation as a positive. And so how could we, you know, get a couple guys healthy, but also have some good-on-good periods where we're not just game planning or doing scout work, and have some competitive opportunities where, you know, your ones are going against ones or twos, and, you know, we can play it. And so, you know, it wasn't your typical game week practice where you're doing a lot of scouted work. It was a lot of good-on-good practice reps.
On the right side, Tim O'Malley.
Coach, you mentioned turnovers, creating turnovers. It's something you guys work on all of April, all of August. So when you come out of a game, and I'm sure you identified a bunch of options where you could have or should have created a turnover, how do you work that in practice? Because to reinforce it, you've been doing it for months. How do you reinforce that in practice?
Yeah, I think part is being intentional about trying to disrupt the ball, take the ball away, and that was something they did a good job of having ball security. The other part is we got to go make plays, you know, and balls in the air. That ball's not coming to you. You got to go get it. And so we've really worked on trying to high point the ball, going to get it, not letting it come down to you, right? Being aggressive at getting the ball at its highest point. And so, again, turnovers usually come in you know, high numbers, right? But we just got to keep working it and working it and working it. And I'm sure before we know it, we'll get some.
You mentioned post-game, sometimes you got to quit reading it out and just hand the ball to someone like J. Love. I'm sure it counts for Price too. How do you balance that with C.J. Carr this week? Because, I mean, if they're bringing eighth man up, you have to have something for that. How do you guys work on that, and how do you balance that?
Yeah, I think there's RPOs that you're reading a defender. Like if they're putting eighth man in the box, we got to throw it out to really take advantage of the numbers. But then there's some times that it's a little bit gray, and we got to be very clear with our quarterbacks. If it's gray, what do we want them to do, right? Do we want them to hand it off? Do we want them to throw it? And so we were very intentional about trying to put the ball in Jay Love's hands or making him the primary target. And some of those included RPOs where, we've talked as a coaching staff, is there times that we got to take out the read, right, and be able to say, hey, this is what we want to do, hand the ball off here, or hey, let's continue to throw it out if they're going to bring the extra guy in the box. But we know we want to focalize our offense around Jay Love. He's a special player. But at the same point, we got to make sure that we're, taking advantage of what each defense is trying to do to us.
Front row, Tyler Horka.
Stay on that side of the ball first, Coach. With what you saw from C.J. Carr, especially in that second half, do you feel like you can go into games maybe saying, okay, we can let this open it up a little bit more than maybe we did at the beginning of that Miami game? Or does it change your thought process at all in terms of game planning?
Yeah, I think we were very intentional about trying to protect the first-time starter early in the game, right? Let's give them – I was vocal about giving them easy reads, easy throws. Let's not just tell him to bomb the ball down the field every play, because he'll do that, right? If we allow him to, CJ will throw the ball down the field every single play. But he showed he's ready. He's capable. And as you saw as the game went on, we were able to take some more shots. And so, again, I still am a firm believer on shots are a response to being able to have positive run plays, right? We have to be able to run the football. And but we feel like, listen, CJ can execute the entire game plan, the entire playbook. He's a special player.
Other side of the ball, first game for Chris Ash. Did you see a lot of what made your Notre Dame defenses so good without Golden? Maybe some differences, similarities, just kind of the carryover. That was a big offseason topic, was the carryover from one year to the next. Did you kind of see that direction?
Yeah, I think schematically there's a little bit of change, a little bit of carryover, but the execution is still what matters, right? We got to play gap-sound football. We can't be displaced out of our gaps. We got to make plays on balls that are in the air. We got to be aggressive when we need to be aggressive. I've always said we got to be able to get four-man pass rush pressure on the quarterback. And we all know we didn't get enough four-man pressure on the quarterback last week. And credit to him, he got the ball out of his hands. He's a great quarterback, but that can't be an excuse for us. But, more than schematically, as we evaluate, it's just the execution. We got to execute at a higher level, and that's on us. That's not the players. It's on us as coaches to get them to that point where they're executing at the level that we need them to execute.
Front row on the right, Pete Sampson.
This maybe builds on that, like you say, clarity equals velocity. Was there enough clarity on defense, and how do you sort of coach that up over the course of the last week and a half? Yeah,
there was a couple plays that we probably were paralyzed a little bit in terms of based what they were doing offensively. They did a little bit different stuff on third down than we hadn't seen, and we have to be able to make adjustments. I thought we did a good job of making some adjustments. I believe there's clarity. There wasn't a lot of situations where our guys didn't know what they were doing. It was, okay, you're supposed to be in this gap, and we got to make sure we stay in our gaps, and that's at all three levels. You're just got to fit here. And so how do we make sure we continue to improve and attack that in practice, that you don't get displaced from your gap. You're not misfitting things at second or third level. And when you're in the position to make a play, you got to make it, right? As I said, we had too many missed tackles at the second and third level of our defense that, is uncharacteristic for us.
I don't remember the last time we saw your offensive line sort of get knocked back maybe a little bit as we saw last Sunday. Like, was that just Miami was quite good? Or did you guys feel like you guys wore down a little bit? I was just curious how you assess the offensive line over 4 quarters.
I thought overall they played well. The standard is to play higher. We know that. Part of it is credit to their D-line, good players. Sometimes you can get paralyzed because of movement, right? Their D-line moved a little bit and did some different things, and what we don't want to do is paralyze the velocity and the aggression that our O-line plays with. And you got to be able to collect some of that movement as you move vertically. And so, at times I thought we did get a little bit lateral in terms of, how we want to play our offense, how we want our offensive line to play. But, I'm as confident in that group as anybody on our team. they'll be fine.
Second row on the left, Tyler James.
Marcus, maybe related to that, I'm curious, when you have one game to go off of, how do you identify or separate issues that maybe are game-specific, whether it's related to the environment or the opponent, versus maybe things that are of greater concern that maybe require personnel changes or philosophy changes?
Yeah, it's something you always evaluate. You evaluate it in practice. You evaluate it in the game. I don't think as we evaluated that game, we said, okay, we got a personnel issue. Not at all. It's continuously executing at a high level, right? And that's what we got to be able to do. I think I said it to the team after the game. There were plays in that game where Notre Dame beat Notre Dame, which it's inexcusable. We can't beat ourselves. But there were plays that Miami out-executed us at a higher level. And so that's why practice is so important. You got to evaluate those things that you're doing schematically in practice. That's why good on good is really important. I think sometimes when you go against a scout team, it can be a little bit of football instead of football. And at the end of the day, like I'm as confident on personnel as I've ever been.
And going back to the offensive line, you have two captains in that room. How have they responded to maybe the struggles that they had and trying to make sure that they improve against a good Texas A&M front?
Yeah, Billy graded as probably one of the highest on our entire offense. Emil probably didn't have the game that he wanted or aspired to have, but as far as being a captain, we don't. I hope it's important we don't vote on captains based off of performance or based off production. It's you're named a captain because there's a responsibility that comes with that title, and that's a responsibility to lead during all times, but especially during tough times, and a responsibility to fix problems, no matter if it's your problem or not. The responsibility to continue to reinforce the vision and the voice of the head coach and the entire program, and so. I couldn't be more proud of the way our captains lead, right? And I don't want the title of captain to be associated with production at all. I want the title of captain to be associated with leadership and the influence you must have on the people that have chosen you to be captain. And so those guys have really led in a really good way.
Front row on the right, Eric Hansen.
Hey, Coach, when you were defensive coordinator here in 2021, I mean, you came in, Cincinnati's defense was humming, and the 2021, by the end of that year, that defense was humming too. But there were some adjustments I think you made early in that season. What's that process like in identifying them and making changes versus digging in your heels and saying this is what worked before?
Yeah, I think you have a philosophy as a coordinator about this is the way we want to play offense, defense, or special teams. But, at the end of the day, the best coaches put their players in positions to play well and to play fast. And sometimes it takes going against another opponent to say, okay, what does this guy do well? How does it fit within the vision we have for our scheme? And so I learned that personally, obviously, when we did some things versus Florida State my first year, right? And I said, okay, we got a little bit different personnel here than we did where I was at previously. How can I adjust my scheme, our scheme, to fit the talent and the personnel that we have here? And that was an ongoing process throughout the season. It truly was. And it will be with our offense, defense, and special teams this year. Like, how do you continue to put certain guys in positions to succeed? Right? We have really good football players here. It's our job to make sure that we put them in positions to have success and they play well enough to execute what we're asking them to do. And so no matter how long you've been at a place with new talent, every year you have to each week tailor your scheme to fit the guys that you have.
And then with regard to the offensive line, what do you feel about the timeshare with Gerby and Sullivan going forward? And is Charles helping to coach them and helping them during practices and stuff?
Yeah, Charles is rehabbing and when he's out there at practice, he's engaged, like he has a role, right, in terms of helping those guys that are playing, but also helping himself stay mentally sharp. We were intentional about seeing both Gerby and Sully, and both did some good things and both did some things that they need to improve on. They're still slash for this week as we move forward, but I'm not saying that we're going to play them both this week. We haven't made that decision yet.
Up the middle, Vahid Sadrzadeh.
Coach, can you talk about Drake Bowen and being in the spotlight last week? What are your thoughts on him and the linebacking core as a whole?
Yeah, I think Drake would be the first one to say that he didn't perform at the level he has for himself. Drake has been a guy that has constantly improved from the minute he stepped on campus till now. He is really good, and he's improved tremendously, and it helps with having a guy like J.D. Bertrand to learn from, and Jack Kaiser, and he's the leader. He's a captain. He's the vocal leader. He's always gonna want to play better. That's who he is. He is a perfectionist, and he will because he works tirelessly at it. Like Drake's a guy that invests in improving as much as anybody in our program, and so I'm extremely confident in what Drake Bowen's going to do.
Different teams, different coordinators, different quarterbacks, but what can you learn about last year's game on the road at Texas A&M? What do you know about that program that can be beneficial this week?
Yeah, I still think each coordinator, each team, the cohesiveness of Elko and Colin Klein and what they do, it won't change dramatically, but as I think I said earlier, you tailor what you ask your guys to do based off your personnel. And they're asking their quarterback to do a little bit different than what they asked the starter to do that we played them last year. There's still some schemes that are the same, right? There's some concepts that are the same, but again, their quarterback's different. Some of their wideouts are different. They're fast guys. Last year they had probably a little bit taller, longer, bigger body guys. And so there's some similarities. There's some core principles that we know that we'll see, but also there's some adjustments that we're going to have to be able to make.
Back row on the right, Sean Stiers.
Hey, Marcus, you've talked about, in the past, the difference between football and fitball. Did it feel, and you've obviously touched on new coordinator and different things like that. Did it feel like at times against Miami, there were like it was approaching more fit versus football?
Yeah, I think that's where you see some of the velocity that we lacked maybe at times, is that trying to be just so perfect in your gap. There was plays that were made. I remember King made some plays. Boubacar made some plays that probably weren't exactly how you draw them up on paper, but they were playing with velocity. And at the end of the day, that overcomes all mistakes. And we have to have that mentality of not just trying to be perfect, but being aggressive and playing the game with the velocity that overcomes any mistakes.
And then you touched on, week 2 bye week versus if it's later in the season. When it is this, like if it's later in the season, there's probably, a lot more self-scout, those kind of things that you're doing. When it is this early, is there anything, is it drastically different than if it was in, say, week 6, week 7?
Yeah, I think that the physical toll on your body is going to dictate a lot of how you practice. With us only having one game and we needed to practice like at a high level. We needed volume. We needed the physicality to keep up with not having a game week 2 versus the rest of the college football world that is playing a game week 2. Now, as you talk, we got another bye week later in the season. We'll have to evaluate, okay, what does this team need after week 6 in terms of those 2 or 3 practices that you have during a bye week. Another thing that dictates is we played on a Sunday. And so, so you give them Monday off, Tuesday, what do you want to do? Wednesday, Thursday, what do you want to do? As you look at the next bye week, it's going to be during fall break. And so all those things factor into what you do during your bye week. But, it's going to be different week 2 than it is definitely week 6 or 7.
Final question opportunity on the left, Mike Berardino.
Hey, Marcus. You're sitting on a win streak of 3 straight against SEC opposition. You're about to see 2 more of those. They like to say it means more in their league. What does it still serve as a measuring stick for this program whenever you see SEC? Does it resonate on the recruiting trail when you're doing well beating SEC teams?
More than the conference, I think it's the opponent. And, you know, the opportunity to play Texas A&M is all the motive you need, right? Is a program that I and our program respects, but college football respects the Texas A&M and the program, the job they've done. And so I don't get caught up in conferences as much as the great opponents that you face week one and now you're facing again week two. And it's a chance for us to, again, see how good we are versus a really good opponent, just like it was week one, right? It was a top 10 matchup. This is no different, a top 25 matchup. And we get a chance to go out in Notre Dame Stadium and see how much we've improved from the start of the season to now, which is week 3 in college football.
And then I think it could be safely said that not since Regis Philbin has there been a more famous Notre Dame super fan, more identifiable one than the Shane Gillis after the last year. He was in your locker room celebrating at A&M, and then last night he's in the stadium, or Saturday in the stadium. And you acted alongside of him, and everybody enjoyed that. What's it like having him? How is he doing in that role of super fan? What was do you ever give him advice on making sure he's representing your program the way you want it represented?
Well, I haven't given him a hard time. I had a chance to watch a little bit of college football, and I saw a commercial pop up where he was wearing a Texas Longhorn shirt. And so I haven't given him crap for that yet. But, you know, Shane's an awesome human, right? I've got a chance to spend some time with him, get a chance to talk to him. And you know, he's got a lot of notoriety just because of who he is and the way he really performs his craft. But we appreciate the support. Right, we appreciate him and the support he gives our program, and so, you know, it's always good to have somebody like Shane Gillis, you know, support you guys and, you know, helps you recruiting, I guess, and makes us kind of cool, I guess.
Thanks, Coach.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.